And now back to Bobby Likis Car Clinic and your host, Bobby Likis.
We're going to go to Gene in New York, and then we're going to Detroit and talk to Jim, our Car Clinic reporter. But first, Gene, welcome to Bobby Likis Car Clinic.
Good morning, Bobby. Excellent program. Love the show.
Thank you so much. I love your comments and most appreciated, sir.
No problem. I'm kind of new to the program, but I love it. It's education, it's information, and you do an excellent job conveying what you do and how to do it, and better yet, how to help the consumers such as myself address issues with the vehicle. So I'm very impressed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm impressed with your comments are most appreciated. Let's see if I can help you this morning. After that introduction there, if I don't know the answer here, I'm in trouble.
No, you're not.
Okay.
No, you're not. You're fine, and I appreciate any information you can give me.
Sure.
Bobby, I've got that 2008 Hyundai Sonata. It's got high mileage on it. It's got almost 190,000 miles on it. Mm-hmm. It's probably the nicest car I've ever had in my life. Body's in good shape, but here's the situation. I've got a couple of people that have looked at the transmission fluid. It's shifting well, but they're looking at the color, and the more important than that, they're looking at, the last time it was ever changed. And I don't know that. So in the past, I've had older vehicles, and I think if I recall correctly, Bobby, the fluid was drained out and replaced, but there was a filter, and it wasn't a real big deal to replace the filter. When I've asked about replacing the filter, they said something about it's not done, or you would have to disassemble the transmission. Can you help me with that? Or
well, what they're saying is not done. What they mean that the later technologies, and this I can't remember what that's maybe the mid '90s, early 2000s,
right.
or maybe even before filters. At one time, and I'll pick a category. Let's say Chrysler. A Chrysler transmission had a kind of a felt filter, and a felt filter would be the consistency of a filter on a cigarette, but maybe not quite that dense. Mm-hmm. The bottom line. That filter wasn't very large. It was maybe 7 by 7, so right. There wasn't a lot of area, and that filter would get coated because that's what its job is to filter out, and it would get coated, and then it would starve the transmission of fluid. That wouldn't necessarily burn the transmission up, but a driver could burn up the transmission because if the filter is not allowing sufficient flow, then you don't have the pressure in the fluid, because any pump will pump whatever it's supposed to pump, mm-hmm. only if it has a supply of fluid that is right. And you could actually, like the old Model T Ford that Henry Ford made, you could gravity feed a pump or an engine. It's okay as long as the liquid's above. But when you got the liquid below in the pan, you've got to suck it up from the pan. Now, having said that, your vehicle doesn't have a filter per se like you and I are just discussed. Right. It has a screen. So that screen mesh, there's a possibility I'd have to see one, particularly one for an 08 Hyundai. But that filter has more porous and really is there to keep metal particles, more so than clutch particles, from the valve body and from mm-hmm. working its way their way through the system. Now, right. So now we got that. That's the first information I want to share with you. Here's the important part. Many shops shy away. Almost all shops shy away from servicing a very high mileage transmission because we in the industry know. And I'm not one of those shops, but we in the industry know that sooner or later a transmission will fail. It will fail sooner if the fluid is not changed because fluid oxidizes. Mm-hmm. And when it oxidizes, that means it gets oxygen in it, and it starts to get bubbles and those sorts of things. And the more it oxidizes, the worse it gets because now you have room around each molecule of liquid, mm-hmm. and you have air bubbles around it. So it's like boiling water. Pretty soon you don't have a lot of liquid. You just got a lot of bubbles, and bubbles don't work in a hydraulic system because they can be compressed. So that upsets the apple cart. Now, having said that, here's the procedure, and this is what I would recommend. Number one, definitely replace the fluid using a fluid exchanger machine. An exchange machine it's like a dialysis, except that it doesn't pull the old fluid out and filter it. It pulls the old fluid out. Well, actually, it allows the engine to run and pushes the old fluid out while it, at the same time, replaces the old fluid with new fluid.
Okay.
And those machines, Gene, have a reservoir for the new fluid that it's like a gas grill bottle, those jugs, gas grill. They sever the gas grill bottle, and they put a bladder in the middle of it. And that bladder, of course, if you've got a lot of new fluid, it pushes the bladder to the bottom, and you've got this whole drum of 15 quarts of fluid. Even if your vehicle holds 10 or 12, we'll use 15 quarts so we don't mix and mingle the two. Now, you've got new fluid on the rubber bladder that's filled the container. When you run the car, there's a nipple on the bottom of the container, and the old fluid goes into the other side of the bladder and pushes the new fluid out. So in essence, you've got one fluid pushing the old fluid pushing the new out, but you've got a bladder separating the two. You see where I'm going?
Right.
It's an ingenious machine that I wish I had designed.
Right. Wow.
But anyway, so that's a machine that we use to exchange fluid. Having said that, we first use a detoxifier. We put an emulsifier in the system that helps to finite, that helps to break down any of the particles in the transmission and doesn't hurt anything. And you don't leave it in there because, yes, it does emulsify, and it is a cleaning agent. And that will come out altogether with the old fluid, because we've run it 10 to 15 minutes before we service the transmission. And we've got the machine hooked to it, and it's all ready to go, but we got the engine. Now, we push the old out, and we push the new in. So now we've got your transmission with 95+% of the old fluid out and new fluid in. But wait, what about the filter? If the fluid was so bad, and we've kind of got we look at the fluid. If it's so bad that it smells burned, and it has that dark, opaque look to it that you just know is begging for trouble because it's so oxidized, we want to get the filter out. You can't change the filter first because in the process of doing your exchange, you'll ruin the new filter.
Right.
So what we do on rare occasions, and I say rare, maybe once every 3 months, we will, when the case calls for it, and your car may call for this, after we exchange the fluid, then we pull the pan or the side cover of the transmission, and you can pull, there is a pan, you can pull the side cover. You don't have to disassemble transmission. You pull the side cover, and you lose some of that new clean fluid, 4 quarts or 3 quarts. So what? You just sacrifice the 3 or 4 quarts. Then you put the new filter in, and then you button it back up, and now you've got a transmission that's low on fluid, but it's got all the new fluid, and you simply then go to the dipstick, if it has one, and yours does, and you add the 2 or 3 quarts of new fluid that you've lost. The challenge is that's labor intensive. And to explain it to you, I've probably spent 6 or 8 minutes here explaining it to you. It's hard to find a shop that takes the time face-to-face that goes through the educational process, because that's an error in judgment in our industry, and it's also exacerbated by the fact that many owners don't really want to know all that. They just want you to make the problem go away. So we don't allow that. We don't allow people to come into our service shop and toss the keys and say fix it and walk away. And I say we don't allow that. We do. You can toss us the keys. If you toss us your wallet, well, automatically you got somebody's attention then.
Right.
And you say, well, wait, what do you need? And then you explain what the procedure is, and And so that's the professional, educated way to change fluid in a car with 200,000 miles, and the fluid shows serious signs of oxidation. You got it?
Yeah, I do. And most shops would have this kind of equipment.
Well, you would only deal with a shop that has that kind of equipment. You would only deal with that. Got a hard break coming up, folks. The phones are open. Gene, thank you so much for your conversation and for your confidence in me. I most appreciate it. Folks, I'll be back after the break.